That's it. Thank you very much, Ida. Hey guys, thank you for joining this call. Basically, yeah, today, as I just mentioned, I want to actually run through Optimizely Graph, the functionality it gives. But before I go into the actual content of today's topic, quick introduction. I'm Minesh. I'm a solutions architect at NetSell and Platinum OMVP, been OMVP for the last 2 years. This is my second masterclass. The first one I done around SaaS CMS when it initially launched. And today, hoping to go a bit deeper into Optimizely Graph. So what we're going to be talking about today is an introduction to Graph, the benefits of using Optimizely Graph, looking at the graphical interface, querying with that interface, quickly looking at semantic search, and then looking at external content, how you can bring that content into your graph, and also any other SDKs which basically enrich your graph service. So going straight into it, going into basically an introduction to Graph. What exactly is Graph? So Optimizely Graph is a service that allows you to fetch and sync data from other products, mainly Optimizely products, but because of being able to pull in external data as well, you can actually pull in external content to query on. It's powered by GraphQL. Optimizely Graph serves as an on-demand content library that provides a streamlined way to access content. It's served from a CDN rather than the CMS, and it's globally distributed. So it basically runs at the edge, and this gives you loads of performance benefits. I'll come on to that a little bit later on when we talk about the pros and cons of Optimizely Graph. As I mentioned earlier, Graph is powered by something called GraphQL. What GraphQL is a flexible query language that allows clients to request the data that they need and only the data that they need. So there's not too much, too little, and there's not too much. So it's like that Goldilocks zone, GraphQL. Optimizely Graph uses a GraphQL schema to describe the shape of the data available, and basically you fetch exactly what you need. Originally, Graph was actually developed by Facebook back in 2012, and I think they went open source in 2015. Their main reason of doing a system like this, they had loads of APIs and they were more tailored towards web applications. They didn't really have a focus on native apps or any other ways of distributing or fetching that content to other channels. So they developed this graph service to basically allow them to have a centralized way of working with content and being able to distribute it. Like I said, they went open source in 2015, allowing a standard for a lot more people to basically use. They're no longer actually using Graph, but they're using another version of Graph, Facebook are. But Optimizely, we are using Graph, and it does have heaps of benefits. Cool. What are them benefits? So let's go into it. So basically, you may be familiar with search and navigation. Optimizely Graph is very similar to search and navigation, where you're able to basically query and fetch content. The difference is with search and navigation, it was more served from a Lucene index, which you were sharing with lots of other tenants, so it could get quite noisy, and it's about a decade old now, so performance with search and navigation is not there. Also, you may be familiar with something called Content Delivery API. So this is, again, an API that Optimizely used to give or still do give, where you can actually communicate to an API to fetch content and render it out on your presentation layer or any other device or native app. Problem with the Content Delivery API, it was a very rigid structure. You have to basically, you have that structure, you don't have that structure. Sometimes it was too less, or too much. It was quite a lot to go through. Also, you had to manipulate the data structure quite a bit. So there was lots of coding to actually get into. With Optimizing Graph, you actually alleviate all of them issues. Like I said, you can construct using GraphQL exactly what you need and only what you need. So your payloads could be smaller. And again, when I mentioned earlier, it's actually at the edge. So what that means is all of your queries are executed at the edge, and if cached, they basically get returned in a very quick and performant manner. You can also do caching. With that caching, again, you get all of your performance gains, and you've got the concepts of stored queries, which is basically fantastic, where you're not having to rewrite, or it's not going to the server to refetch everything all from the get-go. As I mentioned, in a single query, you can ask exactly what you want. So again, minimizing unnecessary data transfer and reducing API round trips. GraphQL returns data as JSON objects. Basically, JSON objects are industry standard. It's fantastic, which gives you that opportunity to be cross-channel compatible. So yeah, web solutions mainly what I do. I use JSON objects for my hybrid headless websites for my presentation layer. But at the same time, I can get that same content using a native app. I can make a request to Graph and use that same content that I have in my CMS on a native app, or any other channel that may be online. I can fetch that from Graph. So it's omni-channel compatible, which is basically the core point of headless SaaS-based systems. Also, you get a lot more functionality with Graph. There's stuff like AI-powered semantic search. There's better logging functionality. There's your faster results. There's error handling as well. That is out of the box. And again, the main thing is that cross-application, cross-platform compatibility. So that's some of the basic Optimizely Graph benefits. There are a load more. I do want to mention that there isn't quite 100% parity with search and navigation. So there isn't elements like best bets or user interface to interact with Graph. But rest assured, it is coming very soon. Optimizely are actively working on this, and it is coming very soon, like best bets. And there are some sneak peeks I'm hoping to give you towards the end of today's session on how you can actually get best bets working, synonyms working, everything like that using Graph, and maybe actually show you that logging service that they've introduced as well. So now you've heard of the benefits of Graph, I do want to move on to the graphical interface. But before I do, how do you actually enable Graph? So Graph comes in a single flavor, but across multiple services. Concentrating on the CMS, you've got two flavors of CMS. You've got your SaaS-based CMS as well as PaaS-based CMS. If you've got SaaS CMS, Graph is automatically enabled and you can go ahead and use it quite easily. To actually get your credentials, it's all on the dashboard. You just navigate to the dashboard and you will see it there. If you're on the PaaS-based CMS, especially if you're hosted on Optimizely DXP, you just need to go into the PaaS platform. So in the PaaS Explorer, if you go to the APIs tab up the top, you're basically able to enable Graph. Just a caveat on that, when you are a DXP customer, you can't have both search and navigation and Graph at the same time. If you do want them at the same time, that might have some commercial implications. So speak to your CSM or even support, just get a bit more information around that. A final way of getting access to Graph is actually contacting your CSM or customer support, and basically they can give you the credentials you may need. This is if you're not a CMS customer and you just want access to Optimizely Graph, yeah, contact CSM or contact support and you've got access to it. While I'm speaking about PaaS and CMS, SaaS CMS, I do want to mention that there is a schema difference both between PaaS and SaaS. But when CMS 13 gets launched on PaaS next year sometime, there is going to be the same schema. So there'll be a lot more consistency. The schema changes aren't huge, but it's just something to keep note of that there are some schema changes. Okay, so you've got access to Graph, and I mentioned that it's automatically enabled on SaaS CMS, so you can just go in and use it. If you are on PaaS, there are some bits you need to do. So first of all, you need to install the Optimizely Content Graph CMS NuGet package, update the middle layer startup.cs class, and basically register the Graph service there, and then just update the application settings with your Graph connection strings. So just to show you some bits that basically, here are some screenshots of what you may see if you've got Graph. So first of all, on this screenshot, this is a screenshot of SAS CMS and the dashboard in particular. Over here, you can see the graph connection strings. You also have some handy links over here to actually browse for graph examples. And there's some additional information on the dashboard as well on how to actually work with graph. Don't worry, I know I am revealing my secrets here, but you are not getting that secret key, so you can't abuse my graph index. You do have the single key. The single key in graph basically gives you what public would have access to anyway, read-only access to basically fetch items from graph. If we look at the PAS system, so this is PAS portal, you will basically go to that API tab and you are able to actually enable the graph service from here. I have actually redacted some of my keys on this one because it did expose the secret there where I could not show and hide it. So yeah, you just go to the API tab and you can enable your graph service. And for each of your environments, you will have access to the graph keys and the gateway address. There is actually just a single gateway address. Remember, this is a SaaS-based platform, so there is a single URL there. Cool. And then moving on, you have access to the graphical interface. So you can navigate from the CMS once it's all configured. You've got Optimizely Graph there, and you'll have an option to go to Graph, well, Optimizely Graph. I have actually put a link out to my graph service at the bottom over here. Anyone can use it if they want to play along today. What I can do is very quickly, no, I can't copy that because it will end my presentation. But yeah, if you get a screenshot of that, you can basically just put that link into your browser and that will open up the graphical interface and a lot of elements that we're going to talk about today. You'll be able to follow along as we go through it. Okay, so querying with graph, how we actually perform queries against graph and how we can actually use that in our application we might be building. First of all, I want to talk about when you are creating properties in the CMS.
I'd like to talk about.
Sorry, I just got a bit of feedback there. Yep, okay, so there's different indexing of properties when it comes to working with graph. When you first make a property in the CMS, if you're making it through the user interface, you'll have options in the user interface to actually select the type of property index it's going to be. For example, default, it's going to be queryable, it's going to be searchable, or it's going to be disabled. I'll go through what each of these means in a second, but also you can set them same ways. If you're working, let's say, in PAS CMS, you can actually set your attributes at your property level that you've defined in a content model, and you can just set your attributes like this. So example here is I have a title property on a page, and I've just assigned it a searchable attribute there. So yeah, looking at property index modes. So as I mentioned, you've got 4 different types. You've got default. What this means is this is a property that's indexed in graph, but it's only used for presentation purposes. So if I have something set to default, I can actually render that property on my presentation layer, but I can't do any querying on that property, or I can't do anything searching from a full text search perspective on that particular property. If I have a queryable property, this means that it's indexed and it can be used in filtering and sorting. I could basically use it in my where statement, so I can run some conditions against that particular type of property. But when it's just a queryable property, it's not included in your full text searches. And when a property is searchable as above, it basically has everything as above, but it's also included in my full text search index, so I can actually perform some advanced searches against it. And of course, if a property is disabled, it just does not end up in graph, and I can't do anything against that. I will be showing a demo of each of these types, and I think I might go on to that next. So next slide, bear with me. Okay, cool. So what I do want to do is now bring in a copy of the CMS, and I'll use a CMS SAS interface to show. So just going to bring that in, bear with me. Okay. So I provided a URL you guys can all use to follow along. If you were to put that straight into a browser, it goes straight into the graphical interface there. But yeah, I mentioned about actual setting different property types. So I have got a demo block here. So if I go to my content types and look at masterclass, I've got a demo block here. And I've actually set up 4 different properties. Again, I've got a default property and the property indexing type is set to default. I've got a queryable one and it's set to queryable, searchable, and disabled. It's set to disabled. Now, if I go to my graphical interface and let's actually build up a query on that. So what we want to do is actually, let me show you more around this interface first, then we'll start building up a query. So this is an interface. What you have is you've got the documentation explorer over here. So these are all of the components or actual nodes that you can query against. Basically, if I pull up one of my, this one I want to show you, which is a button block, for example, it tells you all of the types of properties available and how they would come back. So for example, if I have a button class, it's a string-based property and it will come back. You have your history. So these are all the different kinds of queries I have run. So you've got a history that's kept. And also you've got the Graphical Explorer. This is one that I use quite a bit because it makes my life easy in actually forming my queries. I can just basically click around here to actually form part of a query. I can basically collate everything from here and then just press play and that would execute the query for me. If you've made updates to Graph, you can actually refresh your Graph schema by just clicking over here. And you've got some additional settings. So if I open up the settings dialog, you've got light dark mode, persist your headers off or on. If you want to clear your local storage, again, you can clear your local storage. So that's the menu on the left. If we look at the right, so if I generate a query here, I can press play. This is going to fail because I haven't actually completed my query. I've pressed play and this is the actual query that's executed. If my query is in bad shape, if let's just say I copy and paste it from somewhere, I can actually prettify it and we can use this button. And I can copy a query. Also, this star, it basically enables or disables cache. I explained earlier that Graph is delivered from an edge network, so a CDN. So if you want to serve up cached responses of your query, you can actually click that star. You'll know it's highlighted, and that's a cached response that's giving back. If you don't want cache results, untick that star, and it will basically go to server. You've also got stored queries. You can turn this off and on. Okay, cool. So I showed you my content type masterclass demo block and these different options. So if I wanted to actually fetch that from my graphical interface, I can say, okay, I want the masterclass demo block. I want to get all items and I want to bring back the default string, my queryable string, my searchable string. And of course, I do not see my disabled string. It does not pop up anywhere there or over here. Even if I was to hard code it, disabled string, it basically, it can't find it. It just wasn't in the index. I could press play there and it does not come up. So that bit there. If I hit play now, I can see that all of these properties are actually being returned back from graph. I can actually run some condition clauses on the queryable and searchable string. For example, if I wanted to do a where statement, I'm going to go use my graphical where. you can see that only my queryable string and searchable string are showing up there because these two are set to allow conditions being based. So I'm going to say I want to do searchable string and where it equals, and I'm just going to put in value searchable. I've only got one instance of this, so it's not going to be any difference to over here. Okay, cool. So you can see that I'm able to actually execute that with the two from queryable and searchable. If I want, also I mentioned that when a property is set to searchable, it also forms part of the full text data. So if I show you, if I was to do underscore underscore full text in here, I'll use, bear with me, I'll go here and full text. And you can see what's in my actual full text data. It's the valuable searchable string. So I mentioned that if something is set to searchable string, it comes in the full text. And I've got the, by default, the actual name of that block as well comes in there. So masterclass demo block 1 is what I called mine. And that's just come in there just to show you in CMS. I'm just going to go to that masterclass demo block. So I called it masterclass demo block 1, and you can see all the values that I have put in here. I'll make a change to this, by the way. So I'm just going to put the number 1 behind all of these. Click on publish and re-execute that. Of course, nothing gets returned because of my equal statement. I've got a condition there, so I'm just going to put in 1 there as well, and it brings back them results over here. Cool. So we have looked at the different modes of how you've got the graph indexes. So that hopefully gives a very quick overview of that. Now we're going to go on to actually building up some more complex queries, and we're going to go through a whole host of different types of queries you can have. So first of all, I want to show you an example in my CMS. I'm basically using multi-channel content here. I have a number of blocks in here which are multi-channel. This is something that Kunal Shetty, he's solutions architect at Optimizely. He basically built out this model, and I am just reusing it for this demo purpose. So I've got a whole load of cities over here, and I want to actually get a list of all of these cities, and I want to present them in my presentation layer. How we actually go about doing that, so if I go to my graphical interface, if I want to get a my city list, so I've basically got a query here, which is my city list. I've provided a locale. So my locale is, because all of these blocks are in language EN, I've provided a locale of EN, and that's passed to as a condition to the city content type. And I've set a limit to 100. What that limit does, it only brings me back a maximum of 100 items. We can use pagination as well, so I can put in a next item here. You can see all of the pagination bits you can do over here. So you've got skip, so you can skip a number of pages, etc. With this, I'm also bringing back the display name and the GUID of that actual block. And then I've got some additional properties that I've got back. So you can see here that I've got a list of all my cities coming back. So yeah, I've got Amsterdam, Bangkok, Barcelona, Berlin, etc., etc. But you may be thinking, how can I actually just use this if I want to present it on a website? So what I have done is a dummy website using a very quick version of Graph. If you looked over here, you can see this query is very similar to what I have just pasted in. I've literally just pasted in that query into here. I am using a client here. It's just a GraphQL request client. There are loads of other clients. So if you are working in React or JavaScript or Node, you can use the Apollo Graph client, which has a lot of functionality and features behind it. It's got a better caching layer. So definitely recommend the Apollo client. If you are using .NET, there is called, I think, Strawberry Shake client for .NET. Again, another fantastic client to query against Graph. But Optimizely have got a C# .NET SDK as well, which I'll maybe talk a bit about later towards the end of this session. But yeah, you can see that I have just got a simple page. It's only a one-page application. I've got a simple page. I've got my query here saying, look, just give me a list of all the different cities. I map them to strongly typed objects. So my ID, name, description are the strongly typed objects in TypeScript. And I say, look, from my item, I want the metadata key, the display name, the intro text, and maybe just the default image. And then again, this is just very basic HTML. I've got a card component that I'm calling to present it. But the main bits I wanted to show is I'm able to just grab a query and show it there. So if I just show you this running, oops, that's a typo. And there's a one there as well. Let's try that again, npm run dev. So this is using Next 15, but I had to, with my React libraries like Graph, I had to actually fall back to legacy dependencies because they were not compatible with React 19, but that's not to worry about. Okay, so cool. So that is my website loaded. So if I navigate to there, just quickly compiling and hopefully it will come up. I'm just waiting for a window to pop up, which is this one. And of course, this has gone back to Graph and it's brought back my list of cities over here. So I was very quickly able to fetch and render my elements in Graph. If I was to change one of these, although it's statically generated, I can still change it because this is localhost. So I can change a property in CMS and it will get represented quite quickly here. So this is a complete list fetch from Graph. But what if I only wanted to fetch back one particular city? So let's say Amsterdam. If I navigate to Amsterdam, I know, look, I've got a bit more information about Amsterdam over here. And this is, again, I basically passed in the GUID ID and I am fetching that information from Graph. Just to show you how it works on my, from Graph's perspective, I can go to my city query. So in here, in my query, again, I'm passing in a locale. This time, I'm actually passing in a GUID. So the GUID was what you saw over here. I have just, for purposes of this demo, I've hard-coded this GUID as well as a default value, just so I can show you what it looks like when we run. But yeah, so I'm saying I want my city back, and I've got a where clause over here. So in here, I'm saying where my metadata key equals GUID. So basically, only give me back the city where the GUID equals this GUID over here. And that's one of the where clauses or conditions. And then I'm saying, bring me back the display name, which is over here. Again, I just want to, for purposes of showing, I just want to bring back the key as well. And then all the other properties that I want to render out on my presentation there. So I've got the intro text, main body. So intro text, the main body. And then if I scroll a little bit down, I've got the image URL that is a third party. It's actually from the Optimizely DAM, so welcome software. So basically, I've got my city, and literally, if we were looking at the presentation layer, if I bring that back up again, and we look at locations and look at the city page, you can see it is literally a copy and paste of what I showed you in the graphical interface. And then I've just mapped these to properties to render. So over here, I am basically saying, look, show me the name, the description, the photo, and the main body, and just render it out for me. And that is basically how we are seeing that page over here. So how I work generally is I craft my query in graphical interface and then I move it into whatever application I may be needing to fetch that content from. So before I go on to more of the advanced functionalities or the querying that you can do with Graph, I do want to open up for any questions before I do go into advanced queries. So yeah, anyone have any?
There's been a lot of stuff going on in the chat, and I'm really happy that we have some heroes in the call that have been able to answer a lot of it because I'm not technical, so there's no way I can answer any of these questions. But there's probably a few that have been unanswered. And also feel free to unmute everyone in the call if you have any questions.
Okay, that's fun. It seems like people have been answering. Thank you for those who have answered for me in the chat. But yeah, we'll have a Q&A towards the end of this session as well. Okay, going back to the graphical interface. So I mentioned that everything that you can do in search and navigation, also known as Episerver Find, you can actually do in Graph as well. It's just how you actually construct your query. As you can see, I'm being very specific on what I want Graph to bring back. If you were working with the content delivery API or search and navigation, you get what you get without doing a lot of bespoke development. So honestly, I prefer this way of working a lot more. Okay, cool. So the next example I wanted to show is faceting. So I have set specific number of cities. Actually, I've set all my cities and associated them to particular countries. So just to show you what that looks like, so I'm going to get rid of this filter over here. So basically, I want to bring back all my cities, and I just want to show the different facets that I have. And the facet that I want to bring back is country. And what I want to see as part of that facet is the name of the facet and how many items actually belong in that facet. Alongside that, I also want to show the different items that we can cross-reference it against. So if I execute this query, so first of all, what we're seeing is all the different facets. So I can see city facets, all the different country facets. I've got North America. I've got 5 cities in North America. I've got 2 in Germany, 2 in Japan, 1 in Argentina, Australia, Denmark, etc., etc. All the others have 1. Now, you can see all of my different cities being rendered out over here as well. Now, let's say I want to actually filter on a particular facet. I can go to this facet and I can repaste that in. So bear with me. So on my country, I'm saying I want to filter and I only actually want to show North America or England, my filter. I'm just going to do England first of all, because we should only get 1 result back. And just to show that as well, I'm going to basically put in total. So basically that total tells me how many items are actually coming back. So with England, we know there's only 1 item. So let's press play. So the facet results are still coming back, but if we look down here, you can see that only London is coming back because only London was associated to England. I can extend that out by also having North America in my list, which should technically bring back 6 items because it's an OR filter. So we've got 5 in North America and we've got 1 in England, and hopefully my total is set to 6. So I am seeing 6 different cities coming back from my graph. So that's how you actually do your faceting. So again, with this, we can basically pick up this query and use that in any presentation layer, and it's quite straightforward to do so. As you can see, the faceting is quite simple to use. So bear with me, I'm going to go on to the next one, which is looking at free text search. So let's say, okay, over here, I'm saying I'm filtering on a particular country, But let's say you wanted to actually use a free text search as well. So it's quite simple to do that as well. With my free text search, I am doing, again, I'm saying bring back my cities, again, locale of all, where in my full text item, if it matches Spain, then bring back my result set. So if I hit play over here, I've got one item coming back and I've got Barcelona coming back because in my full text, I had Barcelona indexed as well. And it's given me a particular score. So you can actually sort it on your scoring as well. So that is something called free text search. Now, alongside free text search, Optimizely also give the scope of basically sorting your bringing back on relevance, but then also something called semantic search. Semantic search is AI driven search, which is actually a feature as part of Optimizely Graph. You do not get this with search and navigation. Semantic search actually gives you a lot of additional benefits because we can we can basically return back items. If someone typed in something and it's not in anywhere near my index, we can still bring back an item and it's based off AI and it's able to actually bring back that item. For example, if I just change this full text search that I'm running to relevance and I use the full text match of Madrid, I get back 0 results there because it can't associate Madrid with anything. I just do not have Madrid anywhere near my content in my Optimizely graph. But if I was to change that to semantic and hit play, the closest association that I get to Madrid is actually Barcelona. Like contextually, you would think that yourself as well. Like if I was to search for Madrid, maybe I'd get back Barcelona. Over here, you can definitely see it bringing back Barcelona in your search results. So, and you saw how easy it was for me to actually use that semantic search in the ranking field. I just had to set semantic. Also, there is a scoring-based system, so you can see that I've set a minimum score of 5. If I was to actually pull that down to 1, I also get additional cities back. So you can see that not only do I get Barcelona, I actually get Mexico as well. The connection between Mexico and Madrid, the only thing I can think of is the language spoken. So in Mexico, they speak Spanish. In Madrid, they're speaking Spanish as well. So you can see I'm getting Mexico City back. I can even lower that score even further. So 0.01. I have a feeling Buenos Aires may come back. Yes, Buenos Aires, because Argentina, again, I believe it's another Spanish speaking city, country. So again, you can see semantic search is coming back. Paris is coming back. I'm guessing geographically, Paris is the closest city to Madrid out in this list. So I'm getting 5 items back, and you can see that. But again, each of these, you've got a scoring system as well that you can use. So based off that scoring, you can actually bring back items. So that is semantic search. With semantic search, we also have synonyms. So I am going to just make a new query. So synonyms are, bear with me, I'm just going to paste in how you would do a synonym. So basically, I'm asking for a city where metadata display name. So first, let's do Barcelona. I'm getting Barcelona back. And let's just do anything over there. If I was to press play, I'm getting back no results. Now, if I do banner, I'm getting back no items there, but I can apply a synonym to this. So it contains, bear with me. So basically, I'm saying doesn't contain the word Barna, but basically this is another nickname that's given to Barcelona that I've put into my synonyms list. So I'm saying, okay, use synonyms, and with synonyms you get 2 slots, so you can put it into slot 1 or slot 2. Hopefully what we get back now is Barcelona. So basically I'm using synonyms and I've said yes and Barna, and it comes back in my list. So that's my example of using synonyms. Again, when we look at the SDK, I will show you how you can actually put items into your list of synonyms. At the moment, it's done by an API, but Optimizely are working on a user interface for Optimizely Graph. So there will be a user interface where you can actually put it in yourselves or as a content editor. So again, it's coming as close as possible to search and navigation in feature parity as possible. Okay, cool. So continuing on, I wanted to look at some more kinds of queries we can do. So we have logical queries as well. So basically what logical queries are where I can do and or conditions against my queries. So basically, again, it's very simple for me to generate this up. So I'm saying, again, bring back my cities where a country is in either Japan or England. So again, to build that up, I've got underscore or, and then my array country equals Japan or country equals England, and I can hit return there, and I get 3 items back. So I've got London coming back because I know it's in England. And then I also have Osaka and Tokyo coming back because they were in Japan. So this is how you can actually use conditions with or. You can do it with and as well, but in this scenario, and does not make sense because a city can't be in 2 different countries unless you tell me otherwise. So I'm getting 0 back there. I can also use the condition of not, which means I don't want to see any cities which are not in Japan or England, and I get 19 back, and I assure you that in this list that you won't see the 3 that I showed you earlier. So that's our conditional. Okay. We also have concepts of bringing back lists of information in graph. So I showed you over here, in my first query, I was bringing back a list, but there is a feature in Optimizely Graph and GraphQL in particular where you can use links in your query. Links are great because you can associate ancestors and bring back ancestors of pages. You can associate friends and bring back friends of pages. So example is I can connect a property on a particular content item to another property in another content item and basically form links as part of that. I'm going to basically use an example of using a link to just bring back children. So for me to do that, I'm going to actually navigate to another one of my CMSs, which is not just multi-channel content. It's actually driven by the page tree. So let's navigate away to that one. Actually, let's do that from here. And where would that one be? I think we could do this. So a good thing over here is you can see how I, from the CMS, would normally navigate into Graph. So Optimizely Graph. Again, because all of my other queries, I've kept the context of it being graphical, and that is a shared storage central location. So all my previous queries are stayed intact, but they may not be logical to be in the instance that I'm currently in. So for example, my city list, I don't actually have cities in this instance. You can see if I was to try to execute that, it just would not come back because that data does not exist. So if I bring back if I just show you from a CMS perspective, the data first, go to edit mode. So this is Mosey Bank. You'll be used to seeing this quite a few times. So you've got insights there, and in insights, I've got 3 different article pages. So let's go to graph, and I'm basically going to form a link to bring back these 3 pages. So go to Optimizely Graph. Let's create a new query. And in here, I am going to pull in this query. So with this particular one, I am saying I want to query the article group page. So I might just so I can show you going back. So just to show you the insights, it's an article group page. I'm hoping you can see that actually. If I go into here and let's go to all properties view, you can see that the type over here is an article group page. Back to group. So I want to bring back article group page. On there, I just want to show the display name, so it will show the name of that. But then what I'm saying is I want to show the children. So this, I can give this any name. So I can call this QWERTY, but then I'm setting a link item, type items. I want to actually bring back article pages and then show basically that link will show me my insights page, and then I just renamed that to QWERTY, but then you can see that it's bringing back the 3 pages across that's underneath as children on the article page. Again, that's how you would use links. You can actually form friends as part of links as well. It just depends on how you construct your properties in Optimizely. There are different types as well. So if I was to go as, you can basically see all different types that you can do in here as well. So that's link items. Now, other bits that you can actually do with Optimizely Graph is something called fragments. So for example, I'm going to paste in a query here. Okay, so on this page, I just want to show you, I have a content area. I don't want to have to do multiple calls to get back the content in my content area. Ideally, I'd like to just see that as one request. Historically, if I was to use a content delivery API, I might have had to get the page first, then do another API request to get the content that's in the content area. With Optimizely Graph, I can do that all in one call. So as an example, I have my landing page, so article group page. I want to see the name of that page again, similar to before. And I want to pull back all the information in my main content. So I want to see the type of that content, and I'm just showing some particular properties of that particular block that might be in that content area. So you can see over here, I've only got one block so far. So hopefully it will bring back in my content area, it's bringing me back that one item card block there. Over here, I can actually extend on this list as much as possible. So in the content area, if I could have 8, 9, 10 different types of blocks, I can just build this up. I am going to show you what fragments are very shortly, but for now, I've just explicitly typed it out like this. So now, if I go into my CMS and go to blocks, I'm going to drag in this simple banner block into this content area as well. And I'm going to re-execute my graph. So also, I want to bring back the banner block information. So now if I press play, you can see that I've got my card block information, but as well, I've got my banner block information. Again, this is all done under one call. I've not had to do anything special there. So that's how I can extend out on, let's say, content areas, or I can also do that to any other reference-based properties as well. In a single call, I can extend it out as much as possible. With this card block, I have explicitly just set it up, but let's say I'm doing this query against lots of pages or lots of content areas that are going to share blocks. I don't want to have to type this out each and every time. For this, I can use something called fragments. So for example, if I was to just get rid of card block there, get rid of that. I'm just going to get, okay. So I'm going to set up a fragment on that card block. So I can basically do something like this. So I am saying, give me fragment of card on card blocks. So if I was to do on card, so there, I'm just going to bring back. Bear with me. Not being right. Okay, I'm gonna give that a go. So basically main content, bring back the card, that's my fragment, and you can see basically I have my main content area there, I've got card, and then I've got fragment there. So imagine in my presentation layer, if I was to build up a lot of these fragments, I can then just, in my main content bits queries, I can just say dot, 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 video block, dot, 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 rich text. For example, I can basically build this up so it's reusable and you've got consistency on the data that you're bringing back. So that is fragments and queries using fragments. Before we move on past queries, I do want to just check that I'm not missing any. I've shown you synonyms, full text search, semantic search, simple facets, my city examples, yes. Okay, cool. So that's all the different ways that you can actually use different querying options, but there are a lot more, and you can find a lot of these in the documentation. So if you were to go to Optimizely and navigate to docs.developers.optimizely.com, and you can basically navigate through there. And if you look at the graph schema elements, you can see a whole load of the different types of queries that you can actually do against graph. A lot of the examples that I've used today are based off these. But if you wanted to example build up pagination, look at the skip and limit one, and it will show you exactly how we can go about doing that. I am going to move on to external data now. External data is where we can actually pull in information that lives outside of the CMS. For example, if I have content living in a different API altogether, or if I have content living in a different CMS, how I can actually push that into my graph index and being able to query on that natively. Before I do that, again, I'll open up to any questions anyone may have around doing queries in graph.
There's quite a lot in chat, and a few have been answered thanks to the team. But there's a few in the end that have not been answered, like can we do nested fragments?
Yes, I believe you can do nested fragments. So a fragment can have another fragment. That's something that I've not actually tried, but it is something that you can give it a go and seeing if that works. Again, if you go into the graphical interface, it's something you can definitely try out. Someone asked, can you do something like variation? So basically do relevance first and then do semantic. Yes, you definitely can do that. And again, that's covered in the documentation and also gives good reason on why you would want to do that. So for example, if your relevance is not getting enough information, you could say, okay, we have thought of this and give your semantic results to your presentation layer. How does authentication work if we have more than one website hosted in CMS and Graph? How does authentication work? So basically your Graph, to authenticate against Graph, you can use 3 different authentication types. So you've got the single key, which I was showing over here. You can use basic authentication or you could use HMAC. So from your presentation layer, you can basically connect using them 3 different authentication types each three of them give you different capabilities. HMAC is the most secure, and that's the one I would definitely recommend if you want to get draft content back for, let's say, previewing functionality. So you can use that. But in your graph, let's say it's a multi-site environment. So you've got 5 or 6 different domains in your Optimizely interface. You would actually do the filtering on your site hosts. So let's say you've got one website to .co.uk. That's one site. You'd filter by that particular site host. And if you've got a second website, you'd filter that by another site host, for example. I'm hoping that's what you meant. If not, yeah,
No,
I might need a
Vinesh,
context.
this is Rajesh. I was the one who was asking. So, similar to what you just said, so we have multiple sites, and we want to apply the tenancy filter, and we don't want to rely on our client to do that because if we do the client, then we cannot rely on that authentication mechanism, right? Are there any ways where we hosted multiple sites and have some authentication that applies the tenancy filter saying, okay, you are an application one, you will access only the content related to that web app posted rather than everything. Today, if you use this unique key, I see I can request any
Yeah,
content, right? How do we
you can
restrict
do
the
everything.
content? Yeah.
How I would suggest you doing that would be by using the OIDC functionality. So again, if you go to the documentation and there is something around authentication to actually find, yeah, OpenID Connect and your open, basically you can use OIDC. How you can do that is use OpenID Connect to set what permissions each of your graph clients can have, and then you can actually associate that with what graph is able to return back. So I don't have an example of that just over here to show you. But again, if you were to go to API, possibly the recipes, but look at API reference and look at OIDC, um, you can see and how you can actually set up different users to fetch, but basically have different permissions to show what they could return back from graph. I think that might be a particular good route forward. But otherwise, I can definitely look into that and hopefully answer that offline for you.
We are exploring this one, so we're still not able to find a right way to implement this one. That's where I was looking for. Is there any other additional documentation that's available that we can explore? So I looked into both, but how does the authentication works and how do we authenticate to GraphQL and
Yeah.
where do we set which OpenID credential has access to which websites, right? So it's still we're not able to implement successfully this tendency filter.
Yeah, that's something I can. Are you on the SaaS-based system or PaaS?
Uh, right now we are past we're exploring SAS as well.
Okay, there is definitely a way around this, but are you able to message me offline and then we can actually explore that in a bit more detail?
I'll do that, Manish. Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, because the bits I'm looking for in SaaS, I can't quite see because you can actually associate different rights, so virtual users or virtual groups. Um, just yeah, I can't actually show that right this second. So maybe reach out to me directly and then we can definitely look into that.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Cool. What I'll do now is I'll move on to actually demonstrating external content, and then again I'll leave space towards the end of the meeting actually to go through and yeah, answer any more questions. Cool. So if I go to this interface and I have my external post query. Okay, I want to actually demonstrate on how I can actually bring back external content but into my graph index. I am doing this query. I'm saying, look, just bring me back masterclass posts. As you can see, masterclass post does not exist anywhere near this. So I can execute this, but I do not have a schema or a data structure that is compatible with masterclass posts. Now, I want masterclass posts to be an external bit of content that I can pull in. So using Optimizely's API, you can actually do this quite nicely and easily. So I am going to open up Postman. Postman's not the best in performance, so I'm hoping this doesn't do anything negative to my machine, but I am going to open up Postman. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do with Postman is actually do a whole number of different post, get, put functions across different URLs to actually show you how I can actually get external content into my graph index. I am using Postman here, but you can use all of these concepts to actually be able to do it using any other features, clients.net ways of doing this. But this is just an example of me putting in external content into my graph index. Okay, so first of all, I want to just do a get to make sure I do not have any items under this key that I'm going to use. So the URL to actually work with against external content is version3/types. Again, you'll find all of this in the documentation. So again, just so you don't have to remember or write all of this down, I'll show you where that would be. So again, if I go into here, so go to the SDKs and open up definition version 3, and it explains you can actually work with this to get external content into your systems. And again, you have got documentation from Optimizely as well on how to do this, but this is just me showing it live. So yeah, let's get Postman back up. Okay, cool. So first of all, I want to get my schema. So I want to get my external post schema into my graph index. So what I'm telling it to do, first of all, I'm doing a put request into graph. I'm saying I want to give it an ID. I'm just saying ID equals min. I'm also doing basic authentication here. I'm not using HMAC. I'm just basically giving it a username and password. And then in my body parameters, I am basically constructing my template. So this is the same as you may be going through the CMS to construct it, but I'm doing it using an API there. So first of all, I'll give it a label. So I'm just going to call it min external post. Let's change that to masterclass external posts. I'll give it a description, external content, masterclass. And I want languages to be in EN. And then I want to call, let's just call it masterclass posts. That's my content type name. So yeah, content type masterclass posts. And then the properties that I want, I'm going to keep it simple here. So I just want a property for ID, a property for title, and a property for content. Now you'll see that ID is just a normal property, whereas title and content are both made them searchable. It is important to know this because when I actually start constructing my external content and putting it into this template, you'll see when it comes to how I actually specify the property names, what I do there. So yeah, just remember that title and content are searchable. So let's execute this. So hopefully I'll get a 200 back. And okay, perfect. So what this would do now is basically make masterclass posts. Now, if I go back to my graph, which is over here, okay, you can still see masterclass posts. It's still redlining over here, but I can assure you it has been made. So if I click play now, you can see that, okay, it's made it, but it's got 0 items. But why is it still red here? To fix this, you can just basically resync. So refresh graph schema. So I'm going to click there and hopefully that turns blue. Yes, it's turned blue. So that's basically, it's just resynced everything for me there. So yeah. Okay, so I've made my schema. Let's just see what is in masterclass posts. So let's look at items. And you can see that the properties I have were the ID, the title, and I think I've got content. Yeah, so content ID and title, it's all there. So let's say I want the ID, I want the title, and I want the content. Hit play. Perfect. It's at least bringing me back. Look, there is a schema for masterclass post, but I haven't actually put any data in. So my graph index doesn't know about this. So let's now show you how I can actually post some external data. Again, I'm going to use Postman for this, but you can use anything you would like to actually get data into Graph externally. So what I do want to do is go to Postman, and let's just make sure it's made them in sources from Postman as well. So I'm just doing a get query. Again, I can see, yep, it's got ID of min. It's got all my default properties for that content type. And before it said where min was not found, whereas if I was to do that over here, it's now given me a nice bit of information back to do with that content type. So yeah, let's get some data in. So if I want to get data in, so I go to v2 of v2/data. I specify where I want that. So you know that ID I made when I was making that schema, it's the same there. So again, ID equals min. And again, I've got authorization. I'm using basic, so username and password. And I can put in my body. Basically, I am constructing my data in JSON format. It's actually ND JSON, which means multiple lines of JSON. So first of all, I put it into a particular index. So in this scenario, I've said index 2. I give it a language routing, so I want it to be in EN. And I'm going to just change this to 1. And ID, I'm just going to change to 1. So do you remember when I said that I made the title and content searchable? So the title property that I want to now put in, it's going to be title, but then I have to give it 3 underscores searchable. So the title is just set to Hello World Masterclass. My content, I'm setting again, content 3 underscores searchable, hello to all the masterclass attendees. And the content type is actually not called min posts anymore, it's called masterclass posts. So let's update that. Masterclass posts. And I am just going to set it to a status of published and roles with read access everyone. If I now execute this, hopefully it's going to give me a status back of 200, and it's given me a journal ID of this value telling me that it's actually put that in. Now, if I was to go to Graph, let's go into Graph to show you that coming in. So now hopefully I do see that external content coming in. So yeah, masterclass posts. I know I've got one instance of masterclass posts with the content I've put in. So imagine if you had something like WordPress and you had a loads of content in your WordPress. When you publish from WordPress, you can execute a webhook into Optimizely to curate and send this information to Graph. So you could, or if let's say you've got product information that does not live in Optimizely, you can actually push all of this information into Graph, and then natively you can actually query against it and just render all of that like it's native. So I think external content has a lot of usages, and I think it's one of the great things about having Optimizely Graph, and I see it being used quite a bit. By default, it's not enabled. So if you do want to get additional slots put in to use external content, please speak to your CSM or support who can basically enable that for you. So yeah, that is external posts. And now we're going into some more advanced features. So I do want to Optimizely have been working on basically that feature parity with search and navigation. But just to show you what that looks like, I am going to go to the SDKs, which is over here. So you'll see best bets coming along. So you can basically work with the API to put in all of your best bets and basically query on your information on best bets. You've also got a logging system. I'll show you a screenshot of what the logs may look like, but basically we'd get a correlation ID when we execute search, but let's say something went wrong with that correlation ID. We weren't able to actually ever see before what the logs looked like or what the issue was. I always had to go onto Slack channel, send Optimizely staff my correlation ID, and they'd say, okay, it's gone wrong here. But now I can actually set a correlation ID into here and actually bring back what the actual status was, and it'll tell you basically from a message what that information looks like. You've also got webhooks. So webhooks are quite great where, let's say I'm in the CMS, I can register a webhook. When I register a webhook, I can basically get that webhook to revalidate, like call an API in my front end Next.js layer, and that webhook can revalidate all my static content that I may have actually done. It's quite easy to actually generate webhooks, and again, it's just prod-based functions. So you can list your webhooks, you can add a new webhook, delete a webhook, and update a webhook. It's again, I will maybe show you how webhooks work and how easy it is to set that up in a second. But other bits that you've got are your synonyms. So how you actually send in synonyms. So you can do a store of a synonym. So you can say one directional synonym you can put into your body params. So this is if I was to search for H2O, but if I was to search for the word H2O, it would match for anything to do with water. That's one direction. If you do two directional, you can just put it in like comma delimited. So if I did laptop slash PC slash computer, that is bidirectional synonyms. So if I was to search for computer, it would bring back any content that was associated to laptop or PC, but anywhere. So if I was to do PC and there was nothing to say PC in my content, then it would bring back computer, laptop. So you've got one directional synonyms and bidirectional, and you can just put them in using the APIs over here. And again, you've got really nice documentation to tell you exactly how to use that. And I used this functionality to put my Barna, even when I was doing that Barcelona search, I put in Barna as a synonym to Barcelona from the API, and it was returned back in graph. So definitely have a look at all of this. It's extending and there's features coming along. Just to quickly show you what the logs look like. I did want to show you in my presentation, but for some reason, I'm just going to quickly. Okay, cool. So this is what the logs would look like if I was to execute. So this is a 200, so it won't give you much information. But let's say you were to get a 500 or something that was to fail, you'd get a nice message coming in over here. And so you can just query against your different logs. Sorry. Before I go on to questions, I do want to just show you how quickly and easily it is to register webhooks. So if I go to over here. So first of all, again, I put in my authorization basic. I'm just doing a fetch request to webhooks. Click on send. I can see all the different webhooks that I have registered with this particular graph index. And if I post to a new webhook, I can just do a post. I put in the body of where that webhook URL is. So URL of something to a post. So let's just put something in. Let's go and I want to get a new one of these. So let's do webhook site. I'm just going to do incognito window and hit return there. Yep, this is giving me a new URL that I can use. So let's copy that to clipboard and put that in here. So this is basically to this one. It's just registered me a new webhook. You can see there's no request made yet. So let's click on send. That's my webhook registered. I know it's going to be there. So if I click on send there, I'd get an additional item at the bottom there. And let's publish some content from CMS to see items coming in here. So I'll keep that to one side over here. And my CMS is over here. And it is this one. I think it's this one anyway. And let's just make a change to Amsterdam. And Netherlands, I'm just going to put the word one in there. Get rid of you. You can see as soon as I started saving or autosave, it's actually put that in. And I know it was the Amsterdam one because if we take a look at this ID key and have a look at the body, you can see that the doc ID over here matches the ID key of that page that I just not basically auto-saved or updated. So you can see how quickly I registered a webhook, I saved some items in my content in CMS, but the power of this really is I can register to any URL and republish content if I needed to, or even do some sort of messaging service to someone saying, look, this publisher is ready for approvals. Can you go and check it out, etc., etc. So webhooks are again very powerful thing you can do with Optimizely Graph. So yeah, that brings me to an end of the presentation. So basically, we are ready to take any additional questions.
Awesome. Perfect presentation, Minesh, and also perfect on time. You even have a few minutes to spare. I was at one point thinking we're not going to have time. But we do have a lot of questions in the chat. Let's see which one. And also, if anyone wants to unmute themselves, feel free to go ahead now.
Yes. Hi, Manish.
Hello.
Yeah, so I'm basically new to GraphQL with CMS. So I'm working on and trying few things, and I'm having some issues like wherein I'm using the headless approach and
Yeah.
I'm trying to fetch data using graph. But in the preview mode, suppose I'm making changes to the content, it auto saves the content, but in the preview mode, it just doesn't update with the query I'm using. So does the query needs to be modified to include all the versions? I mean, even the draft ones, or is it to be done with preview tokens or something
I
like that?
so I work on a hybrid headless at the moment, so that's been my ongoing project for the last 8 to 9 months. At the moment, I am using preview tokens. I'm I'm on the pass-based CMS, so not on SAS. But
Okay.
it should be exactly the same way of working. Um, when I update some content, it does preview for me straight away. I am using preview tokens. What I would suggest you looking out for is Remco has worked on a hybrid headless starter pack or boilerplate, I would say. So definitely check that out. So I'm going to show you 2 ways you can actually find that. So if I just open up, if we go to Git, first of all, go to episerver / CMS SAS Vercel demo. Definitely have a look over here on how you can
Oh,
actually use um, the hybrid headless way of working. But then if you want to see some more examples, if you go to Remco's direct Git repository, so Remco is just there, you can actually see some more examples. And there's something, the fancy-sa demo, which covers it end to end. But I do not like,
okay.
if I, for example, go to this one over here. So this is Optimizely production 1. I just want to see what you mentioned quickly. So I'll go to my insights. I'll go to on-page editing, which is going to come up. Let's say decisions help. It's refreshed. I haven't published yet. So when that comes back on screen, slowly, it should, okay, I'm not going to publish, but let's just refresh that. You can see that I am getting help there. So I've not published anything, but it still kept the context, that help text that I've put in there. And again, if I go to on-page editing there, I still see help there. So there's something that you might, again, if you want to reach out to me directly, you can find me on Slack. There's something I might be able to help you there with as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But thanks, Manish. Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else?
Uh, I have one question. Is she asked about if you are getting if you are editing any content over here, you are not able to get the draft content into the graph query editor. That's what the question earlier.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I have
Yes.
the
Yes.
same question. I also had the configuration that content version sync mode as a draft and published only. I tried that, but that option is also not working for me. Like I'm still not getting the draft content of the data.
It, again, it's the same answer as before. It depends on what authentication method you're using to fetch your graph, also the preview tokens, you setting them correctly. Again, PAS and SAS are slightly different. If it's on the PAS, there's a different way of doing it. So I'm on my PAS version, I'm on graph schema version 3.7. If you are on the latest version, let's say 3.10 onwards, there's a different way of actually working with the schema and the preview tokens. But again, it's something we can definitely accomplish. And as you can see on I made a change over here. I called it help. I haven't published it, but I'm getting the draft content in this presentation there. So again, reach out to me on Slack and I can help you work through that.
Yeah, sure. How can we reach out to you in Slack?
Yes, so you'll find me in the Optimizely. So if you just open up Slack, go to Optimizely, you'll see me as Manesh. You should see me there.
Okay.
I can also link this in the follow-up email.
Yeah, please do so, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions that I have maybe missed in the chat? Sorry, while I was demoing, I wasn't following the chat so closely.
There's a few now in the end, and I'm wondering which one, because we have 7 minutes, which one we should take. Does anyone want to come off mute, or should I just pick one?
Evil.
Hey Manish, a quick question. So this GraphQL data from external source, where are we saving all this? And also for the search, the indexing, where is all this being managed? And is there a limit to
Yeah,
how much data we can save?
yeah, sure. Okay, so my external content or even my CMS content, that is saved on Optimizely's graph infrastructure. Behind the scenes, there is a search technology that they use behind the scenes. I can't remember if it was Lucene or not, but how it's actually served, it's served from the edge. So it caches and stores a lot of that information from a CDN and serves you the queries from CDN. The actual infrastructure setup, I don't know it fully off the top of my head, but we can definitely get you that information. Again, if you go onto Slack, you'll see an Optimizely graph channel in there, and there's a lot of staff members from Optimizely that would give you a lot more information around the architectural setup of how graphic actually work, the inner workings of it.
Sure, Manish. Thank you.
I see someone's asked about costings. Are there any costs for requesting additional indexes to store external content? Again, commercially, I do not know. I did have to ask someone to enable external contents for me in my version of Graph. We would need to take that away. Either is that something we could take away to commercial and just find out, is there a cost associated to external content?
For sure.
No one's been upfront with me on additional costs with Graph, so sorry, that's not my cup of tea.
Let me look into that and I will get back to you, Dom.
Second to that, is there a plan to create UI interface in CMS? Yeah, so this is exactly what we were talking about. So at the moment, there are APIs, but Optimizely are working on UIs where best bets, synonyms, all of that sort of nice stuff that you used to get with search and navigation, you'll have a nice user interface to work against, and that is in the works. Cool. Maybe time for a couple more?
Yes. Is there a way to disable the AI portion of the OptiGraph?
So when I was showing you my semantic search, you can do it based off relevance, or you could do semantic search. You're not forced to use semantic search, or you're not even forced to use synonyms. So just do not include the semantic in full text search. So we have this, where was it? Yeah, so basically in the ranking, don't do semantic, just do relevance, and that would hopefully turn off AI-based searching, and we just do it on relevance. If you don't want to do it on here, you can do it on date order as well. So bring back order me my content based off alphabetically, for example, and that would just list out all the items alphabetically. So yeah, you're not forced to use the AI portion. Cool. Is that?
Cool. I think, can we do one last question?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you answered it, but can search and navigation and GraphQL coexist?
Yeah, it definitely can do. Um, I shouldn't say this, but search and navigation is a decade old at least now. I, I personally feel it might be coming to end of life for it. I really should not be saying this, but I wouldn't see why you would want search navigation and graph to coexist, where a lot or many of the features you can get from graph completely outweigh search and navigation. But if you wanted to use them together, there's technically nothing stopping you using both together. I just don't see the use case. Maybe if you're doing migration, that's the only way. By the way, if you go to the documentation, Optimizely have got some nice documentation on how you can actually migrate away from search and navigation onto Optimizely Graph. And there are some helpful methods to get you started on that as well.
Isn't there a cost element to running both side by side after a period of
Yeah.
time?
Exactly that. Commercially, there will be a cost element. So I said at the top of my meeting, when you are enabling Graph on your PaaS platform, you can either choose search and navigation or choose Graph. You can't have both together. And yeah, again, speak to your, if you do need both, speak to your CSM.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to end it. Minesh, do you want to have something any final words?
No, thank you very much. And hopefully that was beneficial. If you need to reach out again, always on Slack, so definitely reach out there and hoping to get you guys started on your graph journeys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, will this recording be shared?
Yes, I was just gonna say I'll share the recording.
Okay.
I'll share Minesh Slack details, so it's all gonna be good. Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks for your questions. And thanks, Minesh, for a great presentation.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank
See
you.
you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.